Hey guys, Brady here with my brother JR. We have a huge game against the Oakland Raiders coming up. Packers have to travel for this one. Today we want to talk about missing in action, Run Rudolph Run, and the Eye of the Tiger. Stay tuned. You're watching the Atrium at GreenBayPackerNation.com. Okay, missing in action. Well, today we found out that Sam Shields is not going to be available. He suffered that concussion in the game against the Cowboys. Yep. And that means a couple young guys, couple early draft picks, Randall, Rollins, are going to have to step up.
They are, yeah. I mean, the Raiders do a really great job of spreading the ball around. I was pretty impressed with the number of players that get touches. And so, you know, all of them are going to have to really step it up defensively against the pass.
Yeah, did a good job against the Cowboys coming in. That was a tough. You got Des Bryant. You know that's not an easy duty. But he did not have a catch after Shields went out. He was targeted 3 times, had 1 catch for 9 yards, something like that. But of course the Raiders, even though nobody really talks about their wide receiver core that much, but they've got some players. They got some offensive. They got some wide receivers.
Yeah, they've got. I mean, I would classify Crabtree as kind of on the downhill, but he's still, any veteran you put out there has the mindset that you need. You can put a rookie out there that's in the prime of his life, and he doesn't understand the game or doesn't see the game as quickly. He hasn't seen as many scenarios. And able to play through those as quickly as a veteran would be. So Crabtree's gonna have the ability to capitalize on young players' mistakes and offset, which is something that I think James Jones should have been able to be doing all along. But you have that veteran ability. Hopefully, we'll be able to shut Crabtree down, much like James Jones has just not been real effective in the last few games.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be a focus. I think we might have trouble with their tight end. I can't remember what his name is right now, but
Yeah, they use him quite frequently, too. I'm not certain of his name.
Yeah.
It may come to us.
And Amari Cooper is coming on strong and having a great year. To me, it's the fact that, like you say, they spread the ball around and they've got sort of a dual threat there, and then expecting maybe them to get some pressure with the tight end. So we'll see how we do. I did enjoy the interview with Micah Hyde, and he said, we trust these guys. We trust these guys. They've played well from the beginning, and we're ready to put them out on the field. They're not rookies anymore. And I think they've reflected that. Since the bye week, they've said, the Packers brass, Coach McCarthy has been very clear. We're not rookies anymore, and that's exactly the case. There are no excuses at this point, and they could go out, and I think that they've just been playmakers. They almost, to me, what I love about it is they seem to relish these opportunities, this challenge, and I wouldn't be surprised we don't see a pick or two in this game. But
yeah, that's the one thing that's kind of been missing recently.
It has.
I've been waiting for that interception that turns the tide, because our offense has been putting up points, but still not scoring like I would expect. What we need to push us over the edge to make our scoring really push us beyond what the opponents can deal with is a good interception that either puts us in position for a scoring opportunity quick, or actually is a pick six or a fumble recovery run back for a touchdown.
Right. And we know that these guys can do that. However, I'm very happy if we are getting coverage, too, because if we can blanket cover, we're going to get sacks. Now we have the opportunity for sack fumbles, which we have seen. But between the two, and just imagine, we put it all together, and we could have a good game. But this Raiders team is, they are nothing to sneeze at. This is a good group of guys, and, of course, we all know Charles Woodson on the back end is going to be But and speaking of that, Charles Woodson is going to be facing our offense that he's used to, but our offense has had a couple potential starters that haven't practiced as well.
Yes. Yeah, well,
and maybe missing Devontae Adams, who didn't practice. Who
well,
else?
he actually, Devontae, I believe, was pulled out in the middle of a practice.
Okay.
And so it sounds like we're not going to have him, though. And Montgomery sat out of practice.
Yeah, he's had a setback again.
What makes me wonder about those two guys is, and maybe this is just me, the Wisconsin boy in me, but I love the fact that Aberderis is going to get some opportunities. He was really convincing at times, and I think he's just a smart guy. I feel badly that he's had the injury bug bothering him, and I would like to see him overcome that, because I think he has the potential of adding that quickness that Randall Cobb adds, that versatility that Randall Cobb adds. And that would just be an element that defenses have not been preparing for.
No, that and the fact that they just aren't going to be focusing on Jared Aberderis as a threat. If the guy runs good routes and gets open, he can become a threat very fast.
Yes.
Jared Aberderis could be, offensively speaking, not position-wise, but he could be the James Starks of our offense right now. Remember in 2010, we still were struggling with the running game. James Starks came on at the right time. Just did enough. And it made all the difference. Jared, now we're running the ball well. And team defenses know we've got Randall Cobb, we've got James Jones. But with Ty Montgomery out, Adams out, like you're saying, Jared Aberderis could become that sort of the mulligan on our team.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Janis is the other one that I really want. I'm really pulling for the guy because he's obviously got speed. His only problem is his sloppy route running. That could get you by just fine in high school, and even if you're that fast, even in college, you can run sloppy routes and still get open. In the NFL, it doesn't work so well.
No.
You have to run crisp routes, and if he can hone that in, I think he could be outstanding. He could make the difference in all the stuff that we've been missing receiving wise. Where James Jones just hasn't really contributed as much as we had hoped that he would, where Devontae and Ty Montgomery's been out. We've been missing that, and I think both these guys could make the leap. It's just a matter of, will it be in time?
Yeah, for me, Jeff Janis, unfortunately, when he's out on offense, has been basically a placeholder at this point.
Yeah.
That's not to say he doesn't have the opportunity, or that he can't do it, but then you look at his special teams, he is absolutely going nuts. He had like 3 crazy blasting hits on special teams. So this could very well be the game where he gets more targets. That's the thing that I think everybody is waiting for, is a game where Jeff Janis gets targets like Devontae Adams did, targeted like 11 times or something. Well, does he catch the ball? Now, you're not going to get targets if you don't get open, and I think that, like you're saying, that's the reason Jeff Janis isn't getting targets at this point.
Right.
But we'll see. We'll see
he's
how it goes.
not getting separation.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I do want to say, in terms of missing in action, and Devontae Adams in particular, we were talking about this before we started recording the show. Devontae Adams, I think, is basically, I think he's in McCarthy's doghouse. Do you notice how many... It was before McCarthy took over the play calling against the Cowboys, we were targeting Devontae. It was like we were trying to force him to be good, and he would refuse.
Yeah.
McCarthy takes the play calling down. He gets targeted 2 times and made both catches.
Made good on
but he knows if he makes the field, or if he gets back out on the field again, we are not going to be forcing the ball to this guy anymore. He is going to have to earn it, and this offense is going to run on your James Joneses, your Randall Cobbs, with hopefully some Jeff Janis and Jared Aberderis sprinkled in. Devontae Adams, I think he is on the bubble right now. Mike McCarthy has taken note of his inability to collect on all of these targets that he's had. So, again, doors wide open for Jeff Janis and Jared Aberderis.
Any of these guys to make this
You can have all the talent in the world. If you don't catch the ball, you're just not going to make it. Okay? So, let's move on, because we wanted to talk about Run, Rudolph, Run. So we're going to explain, first of all, what that means. So Run, Rudolph, Run, a little Christmas reference there, but basically The Packers against the Cowboys, we pounded the rock, and we suddenly saw our scoring come back. Now, some of that had to do, obviously, with execution, because Eddie Lacy was a beast. But Eddie Lacy had a couple 100-yard games in a row not long before. Right. James Starks with a couple of touchdowns. One was not technically a rush, but the Packers seem to do well when they pound the rock.
Right. I think aside from the whole I didn't make curfew debacle against Detroit, Lacy has had 100-yard games since Minnesota. So that I really see that trend continuing, and it needs to continue. Mm-hmm. And like you say, the play calling has been more run heavy. I wrote an article earlier this week.
Run heavy.
Run heavy, yeah. Did I not say
that?
Oh,
you mean recently?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Recently.
Okay, I thought you were talking about it in general. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Because aside from the Detroit game where we're still back around running the ball 20 times a game, we've been running the ball upwards to 28, 30, 34 times against Minnesota. How many did we was it against the Cowboys?
40 times. Yeah,
40 times against the Cowboys.
Fullback and everybody. If you count Cobb and everybody in there. And that's the thing. Even against Detroit, now we didn't have as many rushes, but we in the past we've basically decided we have to throw the ball first and let the run develop out of that. We've been talking. We need to flip flop that. The 2015 Packers team, when we pound the rock, the passing game suddenly improves. That's what we need to be doing. Right. And you look now. That doesn't mean that all of our runs are successful. Look at what Randall Cobb had 3 rushes in the Cowboys game for how many yards? How many yards? Let me X this out. 3 rushes for a total of 9 yards. That's not very good. Oh, yes, it is good, because it was the fake to Randall Cobb that made the James Starks handoff or little pitch out a touchdown. That and of course the beautiful blocking downfield by Randall Cobb. But it was that play. It was setting it up. It was sometimes the runs that aren't successful make your play calling successful down the road. And that's going to be even harder with a guy like Charles Woodson, a seasoned veteran in the backfield. But man, I hope that McCarthy sticks with this notion that we're going to pound the rock, and then that our passing game is going to open right up for us.
And that, in my mind, is the key: is sticking to it. We've seen numerous games where the run game has been generating some yardage, and all of a sudden, the third quarter, we just stopped doing it altogether. No reason whatsoever, at least from my perspective. But we just stopped running it at all.
Well, we know, and we know what the reason is. If we're in the games where we run the ball successfully, they stack the box, and then we start to. But why? What we do is we become this bipolar team. All of a sudden, we do nothing but throw. Well, then they know how to respond to that. We still need to stay. We need to keep teams honest by continuing to run the ball. And like you say, sometimes it's the runs that are unsuccessful that set up the pass attempts that set up the screen game, like you had talked about last.
Oh, I love
Remember, now I will give us. I predicted Eddie Lacy to have 100 yards. You said the screen game was a key to the game. Those two things, I think this was the best game we had in terms of those two things. But yeah, it opens everything up, and we need to continue to do that. We're going to need it against the Raiders.
Absolutely. And the irony of the whole thing is the fact that in our division, we've typically gone, Lions aside, we've typically approached our opponents with a stop the run game and win the game kind of approach. Against Minnesota, stop Adrian Peterson, that's priority number 1. Against the Bears, stop Matt Forte, priority number 1.
Absolutely.
And now...
And it's Dom Capers himself will reflect that. When you go in, your first priority is to stop the run.
Right.
If you can't do that, everything else you would like to do just goes away, falls away. We've seen it happen to us. We've now started to do it to other teams, and that is huge.
That's exciting.
Going down. Yeah. If the Packers can continue to successfully run the ball, and I think we can, because we've got this beautiful tandem of Eddie Lacy and James Starks. I mean, we are so fortunate to have that. Because if you play the Vikings, all you have to do is name one name. Stop who? Adrian Peterson. You win the game, period. If you stop Adrian Peterson, you win the game. That's all there is to it.
Yep.
But even the Packers, if you come against the Packers, you can't just say stop Eddie Lacy.
Right.
Because we can come back with James Starks, who is a big change of pace. More of a slasher, a 1 foot, 1 cut guy. But
yeah, he's almost got that Donald Driver crazy legs thing going on.
He has a little bit of a crazy legs thing, which means if he doesn't fly over top of you, and he might be a little easier to get to the ground than Eddie Lacy. But they're two different beasts. You can't even just name one name.
Right.
So you have to stop two different types of a run game when you come up against the Packers. That's a big dimension for us moving forward. And then, remember, the ball is in the hands of one Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And it really can open things up for our offense. I'm going to say Mike McCarthy called a brilliant game against the Cowboys.
Yep.
And if we see more of the same, obviously you're going to make mistakes here and there, but if we see more of the same, this could be a team that... A couple of weeks back, we thought this was a team that was trending downward, right? I mean, did that not seem to be the case? Felt like it to everybody. And then, and I know one game I don't think has convinced us. It hasn't quite convinced me. I was very glad to see it. But we had the miracle win against Detroit, the really quite good game against a tough Cowboys defense. If we can play this way against the Raiders, I think we're going to feel like our arrow is pointing in the right direction.
Oh, I certainly am, because the Raiders, despite the fact that they are still not a stellar team, they have the number 12 run defense in the league right now. So if kind of as we're gearing up for the playoffs, we can continue to pound the rock against the Raiders, that'll be saying something about our run game.
It'll bode well for us in the future. And bode well for the Packers, who have a couple tough games following that, a few injured players, and playoffs to think about. So it's going to be big. So there are all kinds of playoff scenarios. The NFL came out with their official list of playoff scenarios today. We want to talk about Eye of the Tiger,
right? Because
it's win and you're in.
Exactly. And like we've talked about numerous seasons, I mean, every season we talk about it feels like.
Right. Oh, yeah.
The standings reset when the playoffs begin. All you have to do is get in, and everybody's got a 0-0 record.
And anything can happen at that point. And we've been on the good end of that. We've been on the bad end of that. This is a team that in 2010 fought back from a wild card spot, 13 or 15, whatever it was, players on IR, lost Donald Driver and Charles Woodson during the game and came up with a Super Bowl victory.
Right.
On the other side of it, of course, we saw what happened last year. So, yeah, your point is get in. And when we play the Raiders, if we have that Eye of the Tiger, we see it. It's all in front of us. Win this game.
Right.
And we are in the playoffs.
Right.
And beyond that, there are some other scenarios that are interesting, too. There's a lot we could talk about.
Well, and from an injury perspective, if we win this game and the team knows we're in, that just gives those players that are struggling with some injuries a chance to kind of recuperate. We still would be pushing for the division win. But it allows us to, as a coaching staff, it allows us to step back and say, okay, we can be a little more cautious with our injured players, because even if we can't pull out the last few wins, we're still in the playoffs. So you would be able to then, rather than forcing a Devontae Adams back onto the field or Ty Montgomery back onto the field too early, you could just step them back, give other people a chance to play.
You're not going to lose a playoff spot at that point. And I still think, and especially against that game against the Cardinals, those would still be some really tough decisions. We're hoping all those guys will be healthy. But yeah, like you say, the most important thing is get into the playoffs. Yeah. That starts Sunday. Let's get ourselves into the playoffs. But so the Packers can get in with that. We don't know. Then the scenarios break wide open after that. Packers are still, probably we'll talk about it next week, could even be looking at the possibility with a win against the Cardinals of trying to jump to the 2 seed,
right?
Which would be an extremely different scenario, I think, than all of us were thinking. Of course, at the beginning of the season, we would have thought that we'd probably be fighting for that. Right. Well, we're back and possibly fighting for it again. The way the schedule lines up, we get to play the Cardinals in there, which helps us kind of control our own destiny in that sense.
Right.
But yeah, after the Raiders game, that'll probably come a lot.
Which is why on the Atrium next week we'll be discussing. We'll have a better idea of that scenario.
Absolutely,
and we'll be discussing more in depth because we'll be meeting the Cardinals.
Yep. We don't want to look too far ahead. Of course, that's what playoff scenarios are all about. It's if this, then that kind of stuff. But you know, the Vikings are going to have something to say in this too, because we got to play them at the end of the season.
Yeah, and you know, as far as winning the division, there are some pretty simple scenarios. You feel like you control what you can control, and all you can control is whether or not you execute properly and win the games. So win all 3 games, no problem. It's not a problem. Yep. We can still lose. We can actually lose 2 of those games and still come out with the win. Those scenarios will all play out, but basically we need to get this game behind us with a win to get into the playoffs, and then continue winning to secure that repeat division championship.
Yeah. It's one at a time. Just like the playoffs, they're one at a time. Of course, then the stakes are higher. But I do want to say, I think I said this on one of the Out of Breath Armsore Packer Minutes or something, but the NFL gods, whoever creates the schedule, I don't know if they consulted with Nostradamus or what this year, but we've got the Packers get to play the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals are the current 2nd seed, and the Packers possibly move it. You can't make it any better than that.
Right.
You got the Cardinals have to play the Seahawks, who could conceivably still win their division if the Cardinals lose out.
Especially the way they're playing.
And then the Packers come back. Who do we play the end of the season? We play the Vikings because because they plugged in. Every team plays a division rival for the last game of the season, but we happen to be playing the Vikings, who are the next in line and possibly looking for a wild card spot. I don't know who they consulted, because remember the Chicago Bears it was a few years ago, the Detroit Lions last year. It's crazy how exciting they have made this. I would almost wish it was a little more boring and we were like way ahead, but for crying out loud, this is an exciting run of games. And I'm hoping that we can be excited knowing that we're in the playoffs next week. So that, of course, starts with a big win against the Raiders. We're recording this on Friday. We'll be doing prediction posts, so we'll be reading your predictions. Interested to hear what you guys have to say about that. But most important thing being, we want to see the Packers win on Sunday. So I guess that's about it for us for right now. You're going to head on home. We hope, if I don't catch up with you before, that you guys all have a Merry Christmas.
Absolutely.
We definitely want to wish you that. I'll wish you Happy New Year, I guess, next time around when we're talking about hopefully a big win against the Raiders, a little bit of the Arizona Cardinals. Until then, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Green Bay Packer Nation and greenbaypackernation.com. And so that'll do it. And as we always say, go Pack.